Uh-oh. Is that a tickle in your throat? You've got big plans. Now is not the time to be coming down with something. I mean, you've got a little cough too, and now your nose is running and stuffy at the same time. You probably are coming down with a cold, and this is the last thing you need. So what can you do to get over the common cold? There's a lot of noise in healthcare, and you are too busy for fads. I'm Dr. Vickie, and this is Healthy Looks Great on You, a lifestyle medicine podcast, life tested, doctor approved. Those first 3 days were pretty mild. You even questioned if you really were sick. Maybe it's allergies or something. But now you're so tired, you're dragging yourself through the day. Your whole body aches and your head is killing you. This definitely isn't allergies. It probably is a cold. Now, it could be the flu or COVID, but that's not what this episode is about. Listen to "'Tis the Season to Be Sneezing" to learn more about distinguishing the common cold from other illnesses. And of course, prevention is key. So I'll also put a link to the ultimate guide to avoiding sickness. But today, in mini medical school, we're going to look at the anatomy of a cold and, more importantly, what works and what doesn't to get you well faster and relieve symptoms. The common cold is caused by a virus. In microbiology, you probably learned the difference between a virus and a bacteria, so you're ready to move on to virology. No? Okay, I'll circle back to that in just a minute, but get this. There are about 200 different viruses that cause a cold. They're usually rhinoviruses or coronaviruses. Yes, that's right, coronavirus. Maybe you noticed that on the can of Lysol before COVID-19, or maybe that was a new revelation to you. But coronavirus just refers to the microscopic appearance of this group of viruses. And how can something so tiny wreak such havoc and cause runny nose, cough, and malaise? That's our vocabulary word for the day, malaise. And it just means feeling yuck all over, which is why you want to do everything you can to prevent catching a cold. So sing happy birthday to keep the bugs away. You heard that right. Wash your hands and wash them often, because you don't usually catch a cold anyway. You touch it and then you spread it from your hands to your eyes, your nose, and your mouth. That's where the virus gets in and takes hold. So try not to touch your face. And remember, soap and water is best. If you didn't get the happy birthday reference, that's how long you're supposed to wash your hands. And I kind of wish it was a different song, because in my family, we sing so off key that happy birthday is painful to hear. It's probably best to sing it silently in your head anyway. Now, if you're in a situation where you can't use soap and water, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. And remember, I mentioned Lysol. There are antiseptic wipes, sprays, and solutions that kill viruses. So think about where you'd get the most impact from cleaning. It's things people touch, like doorknobs, faucets, and handrails. And if you want to strengthen your immune system, don't forget to eat a lot of plants. That nourishes a healthy gut microbiome. Exercise and plenty of sleep are important too. Sleep is especially crucial to a healthy immune system. And unless this is your first listen to Healthy Looks Great on You, you've probably heard me talk about that one before. And listen, don't share your germs. If you are sick, please keep your distance. And washing your hands, especially after you just sneezed into them, or wiped that snot with a tissue, or scratched your eye with your pinky finger, can help the next person who comes along and touches that same counter that you did. Or you could choose to wear a mask to protect others. Remember how colds and flu substantially decreased during the pandemic because people were wearing masks. Okay, moving on. Susie Snotface was craving some ice cream, and she went into the store just for a minute to grab some Rocky Road. She was very careful not to cough or sneeze in your direction. But her nose dripped right in front of the frozen dairy aisle, so she dabbed it with her tissue before she grabbed the handle. Oh no, not the handle. Oh well, don't worry. Your symptoms should go away with or without treatment in 7 to 10 days. Oh, you've got things to do before then? Well, then let's look at evidence-based treatments. Now, you need to understand that medical science requires rigorous standards. So, if there is no evidence that something works, that just means that the current studies were unable to prove a benefit. But first, I want to circle back to the difference between a virus and a bacteria. If you take an antibiotic when you have a cold or a viral infection, it will do nothing to help you get better faster. But it will disrupt your gut microbiome and breed out resistance, and that is a very dangerous thing. So skip the antibiotics if you have a cold. But let's take a stroll down the cold relief aisle at the same grocery store where you picked up this virus. Got a headache? Take Tylenol or a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen. That also helps with achiness or ear pain, as well as our new companion, malaise. Got a stuffy nose? Grab a box of Sudafed if you can tolerate the shaky feeling. If not, just grab some tissues. Sneezing and runny nose? There's always Benadryl or another antihistamine, but it is not a drug without serious safety concerns. Coughing? Robitussin or Vicks Dayquil contain dextromethorphan, which may suppress it. Gunk in your sinuses? Guaifenesin found in Mucinex may break it up. I mentioned that there's a high bar for saying something works. Let's examine the evidence. Studies show that a combination of an antihistamine and decongestant is the best over-the-counter cocktail for relieving symptoms. But here's the deal. These medications don't make you well faster. They just help you be less miserable, unless the side effects are even more miserable. So really, you don't need to take anything at all unless your symptoms are severe. Now, there is a prescription option that is effective at relieving symptoms, and no, it is not steroids, and it's definitely not a Z-Pak. It's a nasal spray called cromolyn sodium. Bottom line, there is no cure for the common cold. And maybe you prefer supplements or herbal remedies for your symptoms. Okay, let's walk over to the next aisle. I mentioned prescription cromolyn nasal spray, so what about some Ziacam nasal spray with zinc? I am so glad you asked. Number one, there's no evidence it prevents colds. Number two, there's some evidence it shortens the illness. Number three, it may reduce symptoms. And number four, it may cause permanent loss of smell. Yikes. You should definitely skip that one. So maybe don't squirt it up your nose, but what about taking a zinc supplement? Zinc is an essential mineral that has a supporting role in the immune system's performance. It might reduce inflammation and shorten the duration of a cold. 17 studies looked at zinc lozenges or syrup taken within 24 hours of the first symptom, and cold symptoms were reduced by 38 hours. There are a couple of research papers that showed less colds in school-aged children who took zinc for at least 5 months. Other studies showed no benefit. But if you want to take zinc, don't use the nasal spray. Take lozenges or syrup. But, you knew there'd be a but, didn't you? Too much zinc can cause nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, so pick your poison. More importantly, it can interfere with the absorption of another mineral, copper. As always, talk to your healthcare provider first. Okay, Alex, I'll take echinacea for 200 in the category of prevention. Some studies do show a small benefit in preventing upper respiratory infections. And listen, these plants are beautiful. And if you're into gardening, check out The Beginner's Gardener. Jill McSheehy has a video on making a tincture from her harvest. I'll put a link in the show notes. Oh, look, here's the vitamin section. Let's look at vitamin E. No. Let's look at vitamin D. No. Ah, there it is, vitamin C. Now, if you do your own research, you're probably familiar with the term meta-analysis. And I have an episode on doing your own research, which is also in the show notes. But a meta-analysis is where they take a bunch of small studies and put them into a meat grinder to crank out data with more statistical power, or something like that. Actually, it's a complex statistical analysis, but it is important to be familiar with this concept because it is useful when looking at data. When people who regularly take a vitamin C supplement get a cold, they may get a 9-day cold instead of a 10-day cold. And it might be less severe too, by about 15%. The recommended daily allowance for adults is 75 to 90 milligrams a day, and most people can tolerate up to 2,000 milligrams a day. But too much vitamin C can upset your stomach and cause cramping and diarrhea, and excess vitamin C is cleared through the kidneys. So people with kidney disease should always discuss everything with their doctor. Ready for the bad news? If you start taking vitamin C after you get a cold, there's no demonstrable reduction in severity or duration. Sorry, emergency. If you're going to take vitamin C to prevent a cold, you'll have to take it all the time. And if you're an ultra athlete, you should. This information comes from a meta-analysis done in 2013 where they took 29 trials of people who regularly used vitamin C supplements to prevent a cold. They put them into the statistical meat grinder and found a 50% reduction in colds in ultra athletes. So if you run marathons or compete in Ironman, you might consider taking vitamin C to prevent getting a cold. But for the rest of us, there was no significant impact. Sorry, you've just got to keep washing your hands to the tune of Happy Birthday. But since we're talking about exercise, there's this thing I hear all the time that doctors don't talk about the benefits of lifestyle. So let's talk about it. First, exercise has been studied for its effect on reducing the incidence of colds. The studies were meh, but exercise has a profoundly positive effect on your health, even in small doses, and I recommend you get at least 120 minutes per week. And unless you're doing jumping jacks while you're washing your hands, that doesn't count as aerobic exercise, but wash them anyway. And what about sleep? Oh, I think my heart just fluttered. I'm so passionate about the impact of sleep on health, and there is some evidence that proper sleep helps. What they did in this study was they compared people who sleep greater than 7 hours a night to people who sleep less than 5 hours a night, which is not nearly enough. And it showed triple the risk of getting a cold in the short sleepers. Like exercise, adequate sleep is just good for your body. While we're on the subject of lifestyle measures, you should pay attention to hydration. Dry mucous membranes are dry like cracked skin, so it's easier for viruses to penetrate. So drink plenty of fluids, but avoid alcoholic beverages because they dehydrate you. And alcohol also upsets the gut microbiome. So, speaking of the gut microbiome, what do the studies say about probiotics? And if you just said probiota what, then I have an episode for you in the show notes. Anyway, in 2015, they put 12 research trials involving kids and adults into the meta-analysis meat grinder. And this was good because they used a lactobacilla and a placebo, and that's the gold standard that makes doctors smile. And they found that probiotics reduced the number of people who got a cold and how long the cold lasted. The numbers were itty bitty, but hey, if you like the taste, you'd rather say kombucha than gesundheit. But I cannot discuss gut health without mentioning diet. If you eat the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables, you'll get all the vitamin C your immune system needs to function properly, and you'll nourish those good bacteria that live in your gut and help fight off all kinds of ills. Next up is elderberry syrup. In the medical literature, it is considered uncertain or ineffective, mostly because it just hasn't been well studied. Most of the research looks at gargling with it, but I know people drink it. And since there's not a lot of information, I can't really say it's worth the trouble, but it does contain vitamin C and fiber, so it's nutritious, and these berries have been used in traditional medicine for thousands of years. But they are toxic if you eat them raw. I'm convinced that elderberry syrup is better than the concoction mixed up by a second-grade teacher. She put in a little ginger, a little echinacea, she threw in some zinc, and topped it off with vitamin C and called her product Airborne. She marketed it as a way to reduce the risk of catching a cold, reducing the severity and duration of a cold, and offering protection against infection in crowded places without a shred of evidence that it was true. Teacher, you aren't supposed to make claims that aren't true. The company settled a lawsuit in 2008 and agreed to pay $30 million to refund money to anyone who bought Airborne thinking it reduced the risk of catching a cold, the severity of a cold, or protection in crowded places. If you took Airborne before you got on a plane, you probably didn't get sick on the plane because they have HEPA filters that remove 99+% of bacteria and viruses in the air. But this marketing is very effective, and just like Prevagen, they changed their tone after the false claims, settled the lawsuit, and the old message stuck, and sales are still booming. Turns out marketing is highly effective even if the product isn't. And if Prevagen just got your attention, I hope you'll listen to my episode called Supplements, Aluminum, and Other Dementia Myths. It's one of my favorite episodes. But if you've found something that does make you feel better, like echinacea or kombucha or even some honey for your sore throat, take it. Unless it's a zinc nasal spray or an antibiotic, because those can be dangerous. It's best to spend your money on prevention, and that means soap. It's cheap and it works. But if you do catch a cold, buy some tissues, drink lots of fluids, and stay home and rest until you feel better, which will be about 7 to 10 days, plus or minus a few hours, regardless of whether you take anything or not. During this cold season, stay healthy, because healthy looks great on you.
The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not considered to be a substitute for medical advice. You should continue to follow up with your physician or healthcare provider and take medication as prescribed. Though the information in this podcast is evidence-based, new research may develop and recommendations may change.